Greetings, civilizations beyond Earth. Whoever receives this capsule, whoever you may be, whatever organism, big or small, with whatever listening device you may be using, we welcome you to a brief glimpse into the history of the Earth through the eyes of an American. What is America? What does it mean to be an American? Why did we choose to show you our society over another? What makes us exceptional? America, the land of the free, home of the brave, has always differed from other nations on our planet, from its conception to its current state. We Americans hold the core values of determination, humanitarianism, immense patriotism, and equality for all to the utmost importance. Today, we'd like to show you how we show these values, to convince you of our people's age-spanning struggle to achieve greatness, and the struggle to have a democracy among monarchies and autocracies. We researchers, historians, and archaeologists of the American nation have come together to provide you with a look into what made our country great and makes us exceptional from all others here on Earth. We'd like to ask you for a moment of your time, just a brief moment, to convince that what I say is true. Sit back, relax, and prepare for an experience like no other.
America's unique and unmatched exceptionalism can be seen since the very establishment of the nation. Its focus on power to the public rather than an individual can be seen prevalently in George Washington's farewell address. This address to the American people as a whole was composed by George Washington, the first president of the United States of America, and was never presented orally. Rather, it was published and first seen in news journals available to all citizens around the year 1796. The primary purpose of this address by Washington was to announce his retirement, decline to run for a third term, and warn about the dangers of political parties on the unity and well-being of the nation. It also advised the people of the United States to stay out of international affairs, particularly those of Europe. This does not, however, imply that Washington denied all alliances. He simply advocated for temporary ones in dire situations. Washington's farewell address is significant, firstly because of his announcement of the retirement of office of President of the United States. This demonstrates America's unique ability and value to balance out the innate human desire for power and do what's always best for the people. Unlike any nation at the time, the huge majority of the powers of government were possessed by the people, who were simply represented by a politician that they voted for. It also has a resounding impact on the running of the government and the future events that could have been possibly avoided by following Washington's advice, such as the many devastating wars like World War I and World War II. It also forebodes the continual fractionalization of Americans due to political parties, most evidently and intensively seen today in events like the presidential election between Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Hillary Clinton. This unmatched dedication to the preservation of human dignity for all and fervor for the running of a government with unsurpassed levels of popular sovereignty are uniquely seen in the fundamental principles of the United States. Exceptionalism is present at the very roots of the young nation, starting with Washington and carried throughout. This tradition of exceptionalism is clear throughout the United States' reflection of the past, especially seen in Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. The Gettysburg Address was delivered during the Civil War between the Northern Union and the Southern Confederate forces on November 19, 1836, at the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, which was the very spot the Union forces had defeated the Confederates in the Battle of Gettysburg just 4.5 months prior. It was a mere 2 minutes that would prove to have a universal significance through its poignant representation of American exceptionalism. The Gettysburg Address reaches far beyond the purpose of helping dedicate the land as a soldiers' national cemetery for all who died in the battles of Gettysburg. It most importantly re-emphasized the basic principles of the universal equality between all people that were highlighted in the Declaration of Independence. It set straight that while the Constitution had technically permitted slavery, all men were to be free and have rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It associated the troubles and sacrifices that the Civil War brought with a fire for a new birth of freedom that can be remembered to have been evident in a time of high nationalism post-independence from the British Crown, known as the Spirit of '76. It finally also emphasized the extreme importance of preserving the union established by the founding fathers of the United States of America and the way of a democratic republic, a type of government so equal, so free, and so revolutionary in principle that something like it wasn't present anywhere else in the world at the time. This speech reminds both Americans and more extensively the world that the United States of America was paving the way of a free, democratic republic whose principles uphold the true value of dignity and human life.
The light bulb, a simple invention, but an important one nonetheless. It looks like nothing more than metal pieces and coils encased in a glass cover, but its implications would impact the world. This invention was patented by Thomas Edison in the year 1879. This patent came after vigorous testing of many ideas in New Jersey from within Thomas Edison's laboratory. An example of such testing being the introduction of bamboo filaments into the bulb to make it light up for a much longer period of time. After much perseverance and American ingenuity, the light that would change the world emerges from the United States. Although coming from the US, this invention's impacts would be felt around the globe. The introduction of electricity to the bulb would emit light that serves great purpose to us. Dark rooms would now illuminate, obstacles would now be seen in the dark, and cities would now emerge in the night as beacons of light. Lights have become such an integral part of human life. We have made several variations of it since, all building off the same principle established in the US all those years ago. All around the world, today, light bulbs are used constantly in many buildings and homes, all thanks to Thomas Edison's creation. Another example that shows some of the brilliance that has come from this country would be the invention of the airplane. Wilbur and Orville Wright, American brothers and innovators, became pioneers in aviation with the invention of their flying machine, which we now refer to as an airplane. Based off of observations made of birds, the Wright brothers were able to create an object that would mimic a bird's ability to fly and glide through the air while also carrying human passengers, therefore enabling human flight. Tested in Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers found success in their invention, managing to actually take flight, an achievement that had seemed so far out of reach from man, especially so long ago. This instance of American thinking contributes to the list of creations and innovations that can be attributed to the United States. This invention would, however, hold much greater importance beyond Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. This American creation needed to be shared with the world. The advent of this creation has had an incredible impact on the way people travel and live their lives. Advancements in aviation technology since the Wright brothers' great success has allowed people to go anywhere in the world they wish to. The sky literally became the limit for everyone, and the potential of the plane proved to be of great importance around the globe. The ability to travel around the world has changed the way that countries and people interact. From global leaders who were once unable to share their ideas and improve the world around them, to tourists who wanted to explore and know more about the great big rock that they lived on. Aviation technology, pioneered by the Wright brothers in America, has enabled us to go further and do more than we ever thought possible.
The Defense of Fort McHenry, the National Anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, all titles for the same song that we as Americans take pride in. Perhaps the most important song to us as Americans. Why, you might ask? Well, it all started in 1814. Francis Scott Key wrote this poem, which was later set to music after he saw the British bombing of Fort McHenry during the War of 1812. One of Key's friends, Dr. William Beans, was held captive in Baltimore on a British ship. After Key convinced the British to release his friend, they were stuck on the ship until after the British took Fort McHenry. Ironically, this very thing did not happen, but instead the British gave up after a day of fighting. Afterwards, Key saw the American flag still waving over Fort McHenry, and that is where his lyrics originated. In 1916, President Woodrow Wilson announced that it should be played at all official events. On March 3, 1931, a bill made the Star-Spangled Banner our official national anthem, and it was signed into law by President Herbert Hoover. Architects and engineers developed a long-term preservation plan for the Star-Spangled Banner, which includes a temperature-regulated chamber. These provisions were put into place to help protect this inspirational flag for many generations to come. This song is now sung at almost every special event. The lyrics describe our pride as Americans and the unity between us. It also shows our overall patriotism for our country and all that we have accomplished. Wouldn't you want this patriotism on your planet as well? It's not only our national unity that makes America exceptional. America has amazing landscapes that can nearly take your breath away. From the peaks of the mountains to the depths of the sea, to the deepest canyons and the driest deserts, it seems that America has it all. This is certainly evident through the works of many American artists, in particular, a specific painting called The American Progress. John Gast painted it in 1872 on commission for George Crowfoot, the publisher of a popular series of Western travel guides. It expresses an idea of westward expansion. The painting reveals symbolism of the passage of time as well as American progress towards greater technology. The painting also depicts the progress of people. First it starts with the Indians, who are followed by the Euro-Americans, who are then followed by the farmers and settlers. There is also a woman in this picture. Gass says that in her right hand she carries a book, Common School, the emblem of education and a testimonial of our national enlightenment. While with the left hand she unfolds and stretches the slender wires of the telegraph that are to flash intelligence throughout the land. The Indians are unable to keep up with the ever-changing progress. The painting contains the past, present, and future. As Americans, we don't easily forget the past, but instead are proud of our historic background. At the same time, we are eager to progress forward and make our future even more exceptional than present day. Paintings allow for freedom of expression, and that is what America is all about. We would love for our ideas and liberties to not just spread overseas, but universally as well. Besides spreading democracy, America is always looking for new places to explore, which is why we encourage the exploration into space, looking for life forms such as yours.
John D. Rockefeller was one of the richest Americans to ever live. He established his wealth through selling oil. His company, the Standard Oil Company, was the premier producer of oil that most Americans turned to. To dismiss the competition, he also bought out weaker companies in order to expand his business. By the end of the 1880s, he controlled some 90% of American refineries and pipelines. By the time of his death in 1937, his assets equaled to 1.5% of America's total economic output. His climb to the top of the oil industry and determination to be the wealthiest American perfectly demonstrate the American dream. He also represents charity. Throughout his life, he donated over $500 million to charities all across the United States. It was through his many successes, like becoming the richest man in America, coupled with his freely giving nature, that Rockefeller perfectly mirrors American exceptionalism. Wells Crowther was born on May 17, 1977. He was known amongst his family and friends as the boy with the red bandana. This was because he always carried a red bandana with him everywhere he went. He attended Boston College and was a successful collegiate athlete in the sport of lacrosse. His significance, however, comes from his courageous nature and willingness to help other fellow Americans. After college, he became a volunteer firefighter in New York. During the unfortunate events of 9/11, he and other volunteer firemen decided to go and help those stuck inside the World Trade Center. On that day, he saved as many as 12 lives. After each rescue, he demonstrated the courage and willingness to help those trapped inside again and again. Then, in one of his attempts to rescue more, the South Tower collapsed. His body was then found in the rubble a few months later, along with his trademark red bandana. Wells Crowther is a perfect example of American exceptionalism because he embodies American ideals of courage and unselfishness. His courageousness and willingness to help those trapped in the towers perfectly embody the spirit shared throughout today's heroes in places like the military, the fire department, and the police department. His legacy will live on forever. These two Americans are perfect examples of what this country is all about. Rockefeller and Crowther were two courageous men, and their accomplishments will continue to inspire Americans for generations to come.
War. Something humanity as a whole simply seems unable to avoid. Devastating, destructive, war leads to the murdering of innocents, the tragic end of many young men and women, and turmoil like no other event in human history. How does something as vile as war prove America as an exceptional country? The year is 1941, a crisp December morning on Ohio Island, calm and quiet as any other. Little do the Americans here know that their lives would soon be changed forever. 2 years earlier, the Nazi regime began their crusade to conquer Europe, allying with the Italians and the Japanese in a pact that caused millions to cry out in fear. These Nazis, cruel and uncompassionate, showed no tolerance to other ethnic groups, no mercy to the weak, no sign of any sort of humanity. They had been under the influence of Adolf Hitler, perhaps one of the darkest men to ever live in all of human history. While the Nazis began their crusade in Europe, Japan was on the rise in the Pacific. A few months after using China as testing ground for biochemical weapons, the Japanese then set their eyes on America. They sought revenge for the trade embargoes placed on them, and wanted to cripple America to prevent the Pacific Fleet from interfering with the Japanese conquest of Dutch Indies and Malaysia. That crisp morning, 1941, resulted in a bloody massacre of hundreds of Americans. The attack on Pearl Harbor, as what we Americans call it today, is what brought us into the war. However, why wasn't America the aggressor in this situation? We could have easily invaded other countries in the 1940s, committing genocide like the Germans or bullying like the Japanese. We had taken colonies in the past, after all. America, both past and present, has expressed its nobility. We entered the war to avenge our fallen brothers and sisters, fighting in the Pacific to honor their name. This shows the loyalty and dedication between Americans. We fought alongside the Allied powers, liberating nations from the evils of Hitler. This shows the compassion of Americans, journeying overseas to assist other peoples in their struggles. We, as an American people, banded together back at home, showing our patriotism by pumping out wartime products to support those who serve. This shows our dedication to go above and beyond and be there for our friends and family. when the time comes. Even when the war had ended, we helped both our allies and our enemies to rebuild, handing out millions to jumpstart economies. This shows our selflessness, and something that other nations arguably would have never considered. Had Hitler and the Japanese won, they would have been nearly as generous as we, showing how we differ from other societies of the world. Space, the final frontier. America was built upon exploring the frontier. We've always been a starry-eyed people, looking to the future and constantly hoping. We are a society of dreamers, of believers, of achievers. America sets the sky as the limit, and always sets out to reach it, to always come out on top. When the communists, a political body of individuals whose motives threatened our own, competed with the U.S. to be the nation to stand behind the first man on the moon, they learned what happens when the U.S. is put to the test. We, as much as an explorative people we are also unendingly determined to succeed. Some may see this as an unhealthy competition, while Americans see it as a product of our patriotic mentality born out of years of progress. Putting a man on the moon, the first thing done by any human being, shows how America is exceptional. The dedication shown by the hard-working engineers and scientists, a collaboration of hundreds of people whose work spanned decades, proves the point that Americans can band together to do the impossible. The fact that NASA came out victorious over communism shows how when America has competition, we do everything in our power to succeed. We have always been an explorative people, looking for the answers and adventures that come alongside them. The moon landing is the pinnacle of this dogma, the purest definition of what it means to be a dedicated, explorative American. It truly shows that when America sets its sights on something, it can and will get it done, something all other countries either admire or envy us for.